Welcome to this in-depth overview of Bloom, our latest plugin. Bloom is an adaptive tone shaper. It analyzes the incoming signal and applies corrections to the perceived tonal balance of a sound. Because Bloom is adaptive, these corrections are dynamic, constantly changing depending on the incoming signal. Since 2018, we at OX Sound have been looking into warmth and presence in audio. These two topics led to the same question: how do we bring out and balance overtones present in a sound? From there, the idea of an adaptive tone shaper started to form. We developed an algorithm that refines the tonal balance of a sound, optimizing for both warmth and presence. However, balance cannot be thought of as an objective truth. We've taken this into account by offering the user plenty of control over the processing, making Bloom an alternative for replacing entire plugin chains dedicated to tone shaping. Bloom is the culmination of 6 years of research, development, and critical listening. It is by far our most complex processor to date. A lot of effort has also gone into the user experience, which makes the plugin quick and intuitive to use. Let's check out some examples. This acoustic guitar track sounds a bit too dark for the song I'm working on, and it has some build-up in the low-mid frequencies. Let's load up Bloom on this track. The plugin loads with the main amount control at its midway position. From the processing graph, we can already see Bloom carving away the boominess at around 200 Hz and another frequency buildup around 1 kHz. The center axis of the graph represents the original frequency response, while the moving graph shows the changes in relation to the original signal. Bloom isn't only making cuts though, it's adding brightness at around 8 kHz and also some low end, which we don't need in this context. We can restrict Bloom's processing range by grabbing the handles at the ends of the processing graph, similar to the filters in Soothe or Spiff. In this case, the low-end boost can be dialed out with the lower handle. We can also try restricting the top-end processing, if we feel like this added sparkle doesn't suit the track. Note that these controls won't filter the output signal, only the processing applied by Bloom. If you want to filter the output, Bloom includes these 18 dB per octave low-cut and high-cut filters, found at the bottom of the graph. Let's try fine-tuning the amount control. The amount control is scaled so that the lower range can be used for very subtle adjustments. Okay, the track now sounds more balanced with less boominess and more clarity. Sometimes, just loading up the plugin and adjusting 1 or 2 parameters is enough, so we can move on to the next example. This amped electric bass track sounds a bit dull and muddy. Let's load up Bloom and turn up the amount a bit. You can see from the processing graph that Bloom is mainly targeting the low end and reacting to the pick attack, dynamically cutting the high mids whenever the pick attack is the dominant part of the signal. With the tone controls on the right side, you can push the tonal balance to your taste. Let's try bringing back some low end by raising the lows. It's important to note that the tone controls are not static EQ bands. They affect the analysis of the full signal and guide the algorithm to make adjustments towards your needs. Like in Soothe, you can solo the frequency area affected by any of the tone controls by clicking the headphone icon or pressing Option or Alt while clicking anywhere in the tone control area. Next, let's try brightening the tone around the frequencies of the pick attack with a healthy boost in the high mids. Bloom will brighten up the signal while still keeping the pick attack in check by dynamically adjusting the boost whenever it's poking out too much. With the tone controls, it's all about getting to the sound in your head. For another example of the tone controls, let's boost the high frequencies of this vocal track for some modern sounding brightness.
A storm is brewing, coming my way. Soon me and the sky are just as blue. So what am I doing?
With Bloom, you can add a lot of brightness without accentuating the sibilance.
Making love feel way too easy to be true. Been through all before. My heart's already torn.
So far, we've stated quite conservative settings of the amount control. But what happens if we crank it? With values over 7, Bloom starts squashing the signal using frequency-dependent compression. The meter next to the amount knob represents an average of how much compression is being applied over the whole signal. This visual representation can help in shaping the movement of the compression with the attack and release knobs. Faster attack times can really dig into the transients. Slower attack times let Bloom only treat the tonal content while letting the transients through. The release control adjusts how quickly Bloom reacts to drops in level. It has a significant effect on the groove of the source material. Faster release times bring out more low-level detail, while slower release times add presence less aggressively. The attack and release parameters are always in effect whether squash is active or not. However, it's important to note that when using squash, Bloom becomes level dependent and gain staging starts to matter. To optimize the threshold for using squash, simply click the squash auto calibration button while the track is playing. The wet trim also includes the same automatic feature, allowing you to easily level match Bloom's processing to the dry signal. Squashing the signal with Bloom can be especially effective when doing it in parallel by the mix control. You can extract a lot of low-level detail and sustain by squashing the drum bus in parallel, for example. Squash can also be a great way to bring out the existing grit in your tracks. Let's crank the squash on this mildly distorted synth bass track and hit the auto calibration buttons so we can compare at equal loudness. Okay, now let's put Bloom on the master bus and take a look at the remaining features. In the bottom panel of the interface, you can find the quality selector. The high quality setting gives Bloom a higher time resolution, allowing it to update its internal processing more frequently at the cost of more CPU resources. The low latency setting decreases Bloom's resolution to allow for only 64 samples of latency at 48 kHz, which is useful for tracking through the plugin. The stereo mode selector allows you to split Bloom into 2 instances for shaping the tone of the mid and side channels or left and right channels separately. The tone controls now display the different settings of the split channels with the 2 labeled tone control handles. This lets you quickly adjust the tone of either channel. The first buttons allow you to focus on either of the split channels, highlighting its tone controls and the changes Bloom is making on the processing graph. You can still see how the other channel is being processed from the second added line in the graph. You can also link the tone controls for both channels by clicking this icon. This will keep the relative position of the other channel the same when moving the controls of either. Lowering the link percentage makes Bloom analyze the split channels separately. At a 0%, Bloom works as 2 independent instances for both channels, while at 100%, the channels are summed before analysis. Even with the link control at 100%, you can adjust the tonal balance for the split channel separately, while Bloom reacts to the summed signal. Lower link values can accentuate the width of the source material. The focus control can be used to decide the relative amount of processing between the split channels. In its midway position, Bloom processes both channels at equal amounts. Adjusting the focus to either direction will decrease the processing of the opposite channel. Finally, the top panel includes switchable AV states for comparing settings, a window size selector, and a quick help menu for accessing the manual and hiding tooltips. We also included an external sidechain feature, which is useful when exporting stems through bus processing. Bloom also ships with various useful presets that have been crafted to provide good starting points for many different use cases. That concludes our overview video. Head over to oxsound.com to download Bloom and try it for 20 days for free.